Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your mowers will practically build themselves. Hello folks, it's Mad Dog Merv. You'll have to pardon the Christmas apparel, but we are headed out to a site that used to be a drag strip here in the Salt Lake Valley. I'm doing this series on the drag racing history here in the Salt Lake Valley, and even though some of you might not be from around here, I think you're still going to find this drag racing history interesting. So we're going to throw it out there and just see how it goes. But today we are headed out to the old site of the Neilsen's Salt Lake Dragway, I think it was called, or Salt Lake Raceway. And it was in existence for just a few years in the early 1960s. But we're going to take a look at the site and see what's there today. We're going to talk a little bit about it. And, well, we're going to talk about one of the other strips as well. So stick with Mad Dog Merv as we look into some of the drag racing history here in Salt Lake City.
So our story begins in July of 1952 at the Salt Lake City Municipal Airport number 2. Salt Lake City commissioners had approved a drag race to be held that day. Now this place is located west of Midvale in Utah. It's not really close to Salt Lake City. It's not in Salt Lake City. You know, you're probably 12 miles out of Salt Lake City. Anyway, it was to be supervised by the Salt Lake City Police. Cars and motorcycles were to be electronically timed. On August 29th of 54, Salt Lake City Motorcycle Club held a drag race at the airport. And there were some photos in the December 1954 Hot Rod magazine of this particular event. The Salt Lake City Timing Association staged quarter-mile drag races at the airport at intervals in June through late September of 1955. The Salt Lake City Commission granted the use of the airport for drag racing on 13 different dates in 1958. The Timing Association agreed to pay a rental fee of $100 a day. 1,500 spectators watched 122 entries on the first race of the 1958 season on April 13th. There was a track record set of 143.08 by a top fuel dragster run by Chuck Shugan. Gary Neilsen, a local racer whose dragster is pictured here, went in with some investors and they opened up a raceway in 1960, a little ways farther north, and most of the drag racing action concentrated in that location, and that's what we're going to talk about next. Bi-weekly Sunday racing schedule was held in 1957 and again in 1958. The races generally drew around 100 competitors, with the largest being 180 racers in June of 1956. The strip was one of 90 NHRA-sanctioned tracks in the country in 1957. The Intermountain Championship Drag Races, an annual event, was held on September 7th and 8th of 1957. Salt Lake Raceway was in operation from 1960 to 1965. In early 1960, drag racer Gary Neilsen and some businessmen started construction on a quarter-mile drag strip on the north side of 2100 South and 4900 West. Now, this area had previously been owned by the Utah Arms Plant, this whole fenced-off area all the way down to 5600, and my theory is that the U.S. government was starting to surplus and sell off some of this land, and I think that's how they acquired this, but I'm not 100% sure on that. That's just my theory. Anyway, bleachers were built to seat 3,000 spectators. They were shooting to start racing on May 29th with regular racing every Sunday. After it opened, drag racing moved to this location in Salt Lake Valley from its beginnings out at Airport Number 2 in West Jordan. The first published reports of a drag race at this track was for a race held on June 12, 1960. Fred Anderson of Logan established a track record with a run of 168 miles an hour at 8.98 seconds. The 1961 season opened with a few improvements, including an improved shut-off area and a graveled pit at the end of the track, and new spectator areas. In June of 1962, after installing lighting, the strip inaugurated Saturday night racing. So, on May 17th of 1964, a guy named Bill Leon was killed during qualifying. He lost control of his dragster near the finish line, going an estimated 125 miles an hour. According to reports, this had only been like the third time that he had taken the vehicle out. And again, according to reports from some of the folks that I talked to that used to race there, they said that the top end was, well, kind of a sketchy area, that it was a bit bumpy and not quite so easy to control your vehicle. The track held a benefit meet in June for the surviving family members, which was really nice of them. So 1 week after the season opener on July 25th, 1965, the Raceway went into direct competition with the newly opened Bonneville drag strip 2 miles to the east. They had built a new return road here at Neilsen's that previous season, probably to appease some of the unhappy racers. However, all of the spectators and most of the racers transferred their interests and attendance to the new drag strip on May 2nd. Old Salt Lake Raceway tried valiantly to compete that summer, running races on Friday nights as they couldn't go head-to-head against the new Bonneville track on Sundays or Saturday nights. In this picture, you'll notice the tower looks different, and it also has stairs up the side of it. I'm not 100% sure, but this looks like Neilsen's, and I'm pretty sure that last year, that 1965 year, this was one of the improvements, was they had painted this and they had added the stairs on the side. But I'm not 100% sure. This is definitely not Copper Raceway or some of the others that we will talk about. Here we have a newspaper clipping that signifies what I was just talking about. Here, down at the bottom, you see Bonneville Drag Strip, double header, Saturday, July 24th. And up at the top, there's an ad for Salt Lake Raceway. They brought in some guy named Gary Cagle, who's a national record holder, to race on Friday night. Well, unfortunately, they wound up going out of business very shortly after. So here's a great overhead shot taken in April of 1964. Hey, my birth year. So to the left is 5600 west. At the very bottom is 2100 south. And to the right is 4800 west. And you can see the drag strip right dead center in the middle of all that. This is a great shot, and blown up in detail. You can see a lot of great detail, even the return road.
So here we are, and nowadays it's listed as like 5200 west. The old maps show it as 4900, but looking at the aerial views, this is definitely where the drag strip was. Probably about 50 to 100 feet that way is where the strip actually started. But yeah, this is the old 21st South. The 201 freeway's right next to me here, but looking again at the old aerial maps, this is the original 21st South right here. And well, this is where the strip was. This is the area where the strip would have begun, and the stands, the press box, whatever you want to call it, would have been right here in this area, and the strip went this direction. You'll see some of the pictures I've got before all of these warehouses got built, that there was just really nothing out here. But yeah, this isn't the original road, but this is the original place. They've built this road over the old strip.
So now we're going to look at Copper Raceway Park, which was in West Jordan, and it's actually just west of that airport number 2. And the years of operation were very short, only from 1965 to 1966, so the first couple of years that the Bonneville Raceway was in operation. So in May of 1964, newspapers announced that the NHRA-sanctioned quarter-mile drag strip would be built in West Jordan called International Raceway and Drag Strip. Paul Durow and Ray Richards, they were business managers of Ramona Raceway in San Diego, told reporters that 160 acres would be leased along Highway 48 to build a 2.5-mile road course, a 2.2-mile stock car track, and a drag strip. The drag strip was scheduled to be built first. When it opened up for racing in June of 1965, it was actually sanctioned by AHRA and not NHRA. The latter organization had sanctioned the new Bonneville drag strip. Copper Raceway was scheduled to host the AHRA Summer Nationals in its first year of operation. Now, those previously announced plans for all the other racing activities there, well, those wound up never coming to fruition. They changed to Friday night racing from Saturday racing, and, well, they wound up closing this track in 1966 as an official racing track. In 1968, police officers used it as a track skid training, and in 69 the old strip was used to test a new auto stabilizer. Craig Breedlove was hired to do the testing. So here's an aerial taken in 1985, and there's a reason I chose this. It's 20 years after the beginning of this drag strip. But you can see 5490 West right there in the middle. It's kind of got some black lines through it. And this was right on 7800 South. The strip, the return road, the parking area, the grandstands, all is in black on this particular photo. To the left and in yellow is 5600 West. How about that? Pretty similar in location westwise to what Neilsen's was. Anyway, the reason for this being 1985 was I had a friend who had a piece of horse property up towards the top of this picture, and he said they were digging in the barn one day and found what turned out to be the return road for the drag strip. And he knew all about this old drag strip. Now this has been repaved, but this is the actual area of the drag strip, and you can see that area right there is where the tower and the grandstands used to be. This was recently repaved in the last few years, but for the longest time this was just a nice wide 2-lane road. Well, that's because it was 2-lane for a reason. The good old 2-lane blacktop of a drag strip. Now it goes down to a certain point, and nowadays the rest of the road is private property, and so I didn't want to venture all the way down the strip, nor did I feel that I needed to, but at least we get some feel for, well, where it was and what it looked like. Hope you folks enjoyed this part 1 of these drag strips. We're going to be looking at the old Bonneville and RMR here, well, a little bit later in the year. Thanks, folks, for joining us today.